Hello, everyone. Welcome to our virtual town hall meeting. I'm Lisa Skari, president of Mount Hood Community College. Thank you all for joining us today. Collin, do you want to introduce yourself? Oh, you're still muted.
Perfect. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Skari. My name is Collin Kazu, and I'm the ASG president. Welcome everyone to our virtual town hall. At this meeting over the next hour, we're just going to take some time, go over the current status of the institution, as well as we're going to have an update by Dr. Skari of kind of the MHCC response to COVID-19, as well as we're going to have a lot of time focusing on questions all of you have submitted, as well as we'll have time in the end for everyone to submit questions in the chat. So if you have any questions, go ahead and submit them there, as well as we'll be answering the questions that were pre-submitted. So thank you all for joining.
So I'll start off with giving you a little bit of a campus update. And I just have to start off by saying, I think all of us are struggling with, this is a spring term unlike any other at Mount Hood Community College or anywhere else. Never before have we gone fully online for our classes or student support services. I want to express my appreciation for the patience and grace you have shown our faculty and staff as they've had to fundamentally change the way they work. Given the amount of information we have to cover and the fact that we want to provide plenty of time for questions and answers, I want to kind of give you an update of what we know right now and what we don't know. So for the things we know, we're currently operating under the governor's executive order, which we remain in our current phase, which is learning and working remotely. We're following guidelines and guidance from our local and state health authorities. And from what we understand today, campus reopening is contingent on when Multnomah County as a whole can begin the process of reopening. There are 7 prerequisites that need to be met, and at this point, we're not aware that Multnomah County has filed to reopen. Mount Hood Community College has formed a reopening team that is working on the plans of how we'll reopen and to make sure that necessary supplies and whatnot are in place for when that time comes, we can do it safely. As you know, the June 14th commencement has been postponed. Currently, there is a survey out to students collecting input on how we will confer degrees and recognize the accomplishments of our graduates. For summer term, the schedule is currently all online and remote with several exemptions for some of our healthcare programs, as allowed by the governor's current executive order. If the order is lifted and reopening is permitted in Multnomah County, and we can safely offer some in-person courses, we may find that we're adding some courses over the summer. And it's similar for fall term as well. For now, I can tell you that the schedule we put together right now is online and remote for fall term, and that will be posted on June 4th with priority registration starting June 18th. Much like summer quarter, if the executive order is lifted, reopening is permitted in Multnomah County, and we can safely offer in-person courses. Some of our courses will return to on campus. Please know that at the forefront of all of our decisions will be the health and safety of you, our faculty, and our staff. We will continue to provide you updates on what's happening with spring term and the courses as things start to evolve. Now for the things we don't know. We don't know when the current executive order is going to be lifted, and we don't know if it is lifted, if it will be replaced, or we will just be operating under the state's reopening plans. Also, there are protocols being developed for higher education as a whole in Oregon. So the protocols that apply to Mount Hood Community College are the same protocols that will apply to the University of Oregon. So we do not have those yet, and we're awaiting those to figure out what our next steps are and what we can reopen and on what capacity. When Multnomah County meets the requirements that are necessary for opening, we're not quite sure when that'll be. Once they meet the requirements, they then also have to make the decision to apply for reopening, and then it has to be approved. So again, we have no idea when that's going to happen. And then lastly, we don't know when we'll be able to offer face-to-face courses and under what conditions. But again, it's important to keep in mind that we're here to serve you, and we're going to do all we can to make sure that the courses and services we can provide are available to you under the conditions that we're required to meet. And unfortunately, it's likely to be a little bit slower than most of us would like. And again, no matter what, Mount Hood Community College will approach this process carefully, putting the health and well-being of you, faculty, staff, and the community first. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Kazu, who can give us an overview of some of the online support services that are available.
Thank you, Dr. Skari. As all of you may have been able to see as of recently, if you go on Mount Hood's website, there is a link at the forefront that shows a lot of different resources that was put together by some of the people in the student life department and student development, as well as many current on-campus resources that we used to have, such as Barney's Pantry, is still available to students on a case-by-case basis. An email was recently sent out through the weekly newsletters that are sent out by Dr. Abio Ayelia, who is the Director of Student Life. So we still have many resources like that in place, as well as many departments such as the Associate Student Government is working to find ways to utilize the funding we have in order to best support all students, and sending out different surveys to find out how to best serve all students. All right, so can we go ahead and just jump right into the questions that we have received?
Sounds good.
Perfect. So the first question we have received is, will the college be doing anything for the graduating class of 2020 in the future? I know, Dr. Skari, you mentioned a little bit of an answer during your opening statement. Is there anything you would like to add?
No, I think at this point, once we get the results of the survey, I think there's a combination of in-person options at the point in time when we can do it, a little bit of both, but we definitely, it's important for us to confer the degrees and recognize our graduates, and we will do what we can in a manner that keeps everyone safe and healthy, but also we want to make it a celebration. So stay tuned. We'll wait to see what the feedback we get from students on how we proceed.
Thank you. And then the next question is there a projected date for students to return to on-campus schooling? I know you mentioned a little bit in terms of following state guidelines, and I would assume we still do not have much of a projection of when that will be in terms of which term and which days.
No, you're correct. We don't. There's still a lot of unknowns out there, and so we're continuing to track it.
Thank you. And then, of course, throughout this time, if you have any questions, you could always put them in the chat room and we'll be able to answer them towards the end after we answer all the pre-submitted questions. So thank you all. So the next question here is there any consideration of reopening the campus for offline classes this fall term or at a later term? Similar to the last question, of course, we don't really have much of a projection of when we'll be able to bring back on-campus classes. So as of for now, I would say not much of a projection in terms of fall term or a later term.
Yeah, we just don't know, but I can say that campus, including faculty, are working through right now the reopening plans, so that when we know we can, we've got plans in place, and it'll take a little time, but that we can get courses and services and programs reopened, so you can get back on campus, because we miss you. It's quiet here and it's not fun.
Definitely, thank you. And then the next question is pertaining more to ASG. And the question is, what has happened to our usual spring election for ASG leaders for next year? Has this been postponed until September, or will it be done online? So currently ASG and the Department of Student Life is looking into how we can best either hold an election, but another possibility, of course, is a selection process in terms of presidency and vice presidency. Many other institutions have been doing that in years past, but especially during a pandemic like now, we're looking into that possibility. And of course, we're always open to feedback by everyone. And of course, we would like to have an election to be able to have the student voice be shown, the students choose their next leader. But of course, during a pandemic such as this one, it will be a very tough one. Of course, safety is always number one in our minds. And then in terms of could it be done online, there has been other institutions that we have seen, including CCC, who has held online elections. Although for this year, we've had a little bit of a struggle in terms of finding people interested in running for presidency and vice presidency, which of course would make this a tough thing as well. So if any of you are interested, of course, the application is still open and we're still deciding and talking with everyone on ASG and everyone around the institution what will be best and what are the ways we can either hold an election or have a selection committee for choosing president for next year, president and vice president. So,
Kazu, if you don't mind, I want to add something to that.
Sure.
So for the positions that are not elected but selected, we are going to go ahead and we have few applications came in. So we are going to go ahead and do interviews for those to be able to select student representation for campus. Having student representation on campus through this process is very important. So we're going to go ahead and interview for those. ASG is meeting this week, and they're going to talk about what the option would be in terms of the president and the vice president. One of the things that other institutions that have talked about is possibly doing appointments. But like Kazu mentioned, there is no candidacy right now. We only have one person. So we are leaning towards doing selection. So I just wanted to add that we will strive to have student leaders on campus through the summer so they can get training and also be able to engage in the administration to represent youth and to get feedback to help the administration in working towards the next reopening or whatever the college will be doing to serve.
Thank you, Doctor. And in terms of selection, that would be an appointment by most likely a committee put in place by ASG as well as possibly advisors, but students and advisors choosing the next president and vice president. So if anyone has any more questions about that, of course, the chat room is still open and you can put in any questions you have there and we'll be able to answer them towards the end. So then the next question is, what is your current plans for later elections? When or how will they be done? I think this kind of pertains to, I guess what they're asking is in terms of future elections, like not this next president, but the next one after that and the one after that. In terms of social distancing guidelines and the post-COVID-19 world that everyone has been talking about, of course, we'll be following all guidelines put in place by the institution as well as the CDC and the government in terms of working for future elections. Of course, we don't really know what a post-COVID-19 world looks like, so there may be some differences, but hopefully by the next election, we'll be able to have an on-campus election similar to previous years. All right, so that is all of the questions that have been pre-sent in by some students. So looking at the chat room, do we have any questions that we would like to answer?
Yeah, Kazu, I've got a couple, I'll call them out for you. First one's coming from Emily, and this is pertaining to the closure. And the question is how does this affect the cosmetology program?
So the challenge we have right now is because the cosmetology program requires the instructor and the student to be in close proximity. Well, first off, I should say under our current executive order, there's no classes that are offered on campus, with the small exception that the governor did allow healthcare programs where students were graduating by August 31st. So those were the classes that were permitted to be on campus. That was the only exception, and that was across the state. Once we move into phase one, whenever that is, there are some openings. We haven't seen the final draft yet, but some opportunity for students to come back together where we can ensure that there's at least 6 foot of social distancing, enhanced cleaning. It has to do with some space requirements, so there is some possibility. One of the things we worked really hard on in the draft guidelines was trying to allow this idea of instructor-student pairs, which closely relates to cosmetology and also with the labs that the students do. And so we encourage that guidance. It's in the draft guidance that we're waiting for the health authority to approve. But our hope is that when they do allow us to go back, they've included that language in there so that we can return to some of the labs for the cosmetology, not only cosmetology, but for cosmetology and a lot of the other courses that require that close student-instructor contact.
Thank you, Dr. Skari. Question is coming in from Jess next. How are you handling and assessing technical programs who need on-campus learning in order to graduate and fully comprehend the fields students are wanting to go into?
That's part of the reopening plan and the team that's working on it. And that team is made up of both faculty and staff and managers across campus. The criteria we are going to be looking at is once we get those approved guidelines of what we can do, we'll be looking at the spaces that those classes are offered to make sure we can accommodate that. We'll be making sure that we can accommodate the enhanced cleaning requirements. Also, we're not clear yet on what sort of face coverings or protective clothing might be required, so we need to ensure that. And what will happen is every program will have a protocol developed that's unique to that program and those classes, and that needs to be done and signed off on before that class can happen. And so folks on campus are already working on this, but unfortunately there's some hurdles we need to get through to get to the point of reopening, to make sure that we're, well, most importantly, to make sure that we're being safe, but also that we're following our guidelines and protocols.
Thank you, Dr. Skari. Next question, and Doctor answered this in the chat, but I'll just read it out loud. Where will this recording be found? And Doctor's actually going to be sending this out from Student Life to all students. And we'll likely also have this posted on the website as well too, and likely in the student newsletter. Next question is coming from Tiff. I'm in the Wheelie program, which has been previously cut to COVID-19 restrictions. My goal is to eventually transfer to a four-year university to study environmental sciences as a major and also study psychology as a minor. I'll eventually work as an educator for at-risk youth and do research with nature connection as my methodology. I am concerned that the recent program cut and the nature of my chosen path will be disruptive given current circumstances out of my control, as well as Mount Hood Community College and the institution I will end up at. For my coursework and for my eventual career, much of it is hands-on. What would you suggest I do to help my recently cut program, my fellow students in this program, and instructors? We are struggling in different ways due to COVID-19. Is there perhaps a fundraiser we can organize? Is there perhaps a way we can extend the Wheelie program regardless of COVID-19?
So yeah, that's the COVID-19 has really thrown a wrench in a lot of things, but I will say that it hasn't changed our commitment to making sure our students complete, especially in those programs that have been impacted by the closures. I know that in the Office of Instruction, they're tracking to see specifically with those students what they're going to need and how we can accommodate it. So we still are committed to that. The good news is, right, so they've just opened the outdoor recreation areas, I think last week. So prior to that, we didn't have any flexibility. So now that that's been done, we're waiting for those guidelines and the current governor's executive order to be lifted. The advantage with especially some of those outdoor classes is they're not confined to a classroom. So we do have some more leniency around the space requirements, but we'll still need to make sure that we follow the cleaning, social distancing, and some of those other protocols that may be related to the equipment. But we're keeping you in mind and trying to figure out how this doesn't disadvantage you anymore.
And then pertaining to, Oops, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Kazu.
Pertaining to the previous question in that statement that said, is there perhaps a fundraiser we can organize, and kind of what ways can we help fellow students in this program and the instructors? Regarding fundraising and events such as that, of course, the Associated Student Government and students will be able to help in different ways in terms of advertisement and stuff like that. So if that is a project you are interested in doing, then be sure to reach out to us and we'll be able to help out as much as we can and give input of how that can happen.
Thank you, Kazu. Next question's from Bradley. Aside from following safety procedures, what are the biggest priorities of MHCC? And some examples to offer or to open offline classes, elections, etc.
So I think within each division, there are divisional priorities. So within instruction, they're looking at the courses we can open, right? And the students impacted. So it's also a mix of preparedness. We may have faculty that aren't able to come back due to personal health reasons. And so it is really kind of this balance of what we can make sure we can offer on campus in a safe environment for the classroom. Within student development, again, similar things of being prepared. And I don't want to speak for John as far as the particular protocols he's doing within student development, but they are systematically looking through what can be opened in a safe manner. John, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently, we've actually had a couple spaces on campus that have been partially opened to support some students, some of our most vulnerable student populations. We're on our second week of piloting a one-day reopener for the testing center, in which we're authorizing the test taking for the GED test, as well as other Pearson VUE licensure exams. So students who don't have a high school diploma or GED, which are very, very vulnerable populations, very impacted by the economy and ability to get jobs due to the lack of a high school diploma or GED. So we've opened up one day a week for testing. It's all schedule-based. We've met procedures and protocols for social distancing and cleaning standards. And it took a lot of work to get there, but we're actually doing plans and evaluations of all of our spaces as we move through the phases through the governor's plan, and then additionally continue to watch what Multnomah County is doing as they're moving forward for reopening as well too. But we're doing a lot of that behind the scenes planning work to ensure that we can safely open our spaces when we're able to and ready to do so. So next question, I think, Lisa, you partially answered this before, and we may not know the answer to this, but from Grace, do you believe masks will be required at all times when students are able to come back to campus?
I don't know yet because we haven't received the guidelines and protocols that are coming down. If, that'll be the first step, and then depending on what the guidelines are, we'll make our decision locally from that. Again, health and safety is paramount, and so we want to make sure that not only are we protecting each other, but we're protecting ourselves.
Really quick addition, if you don't mind, to the previous question from Brad. He mentioned in terms of our elections, what are one of the biggest priorities at MHCC right now. I would say in terms of on behalf of the student government, of course, elections are very important, and we want to be able to bring students into the program and have student representation in terms of the future, especially during a time like this. Although I would say the Associated Student Government is also trying to focus on different things, such as providing support for students. That can be through resources, as well as we're reallocating different funding that we have towards different programs, such as the Student Success Program. The Associated Student Government just made a $5,000 donation to that, their emergency fund, and just providing different resources for students during this time.
Great, thank you, Kazu. Next question is from Jess. Will refunds be given to technical programs that will not make it back onto campus?
So if I'm understanding your question right, certain CTE programs have additional fees that are attached to courses. And it depends on the nature of what that fee is for. We have seen this quarter that there are some programs where they're what we call consumables. So the fees are tied to something that's actually used in the classroom. And because that is not being utilized this quarter, partial or full refunds have been given towards those classes, but it really is dependent on what the fee provides and covers, if it would be refunded or not. But we're looking at that. And again, if you have questions, I would encourage you to reach out to your instructor because they're working with the deans and the Office of Instruction on those matters.
Thank you, Dr. Skari. Next question is from Christian. What does reopening PE ELF look like as social distancing is hard to impossible to have? Will we see those courses online for a longer length of time than other courses that are able to maintain social distancing?
Again, it's hard for us to tell at this point because we haven't actually seen what the protocols are coming out and what they're going to require. I will say for those that you point out, it's hard to do the social distancing. Those probably won't be happening or will remain online. And that's the unfortunate reality with some of this. We will offer the courses that we're able to, excuse me on that. Hold on. The problems of working from home. Apologies there. As we're able to meet the protocols, we will offer those courses that we can do safely. So again, it's this unknown that I'm sure is extremely frustrating for you, and I hope you realize it's difficult for us because we're trying to plan for things where we don't know fully what we have to comply with yet.
Great, thank you, Dr. Skari. And it looks like we've just got a couple more questions and a couple more minutes. So I'm gonna try to power through these last few. So next one comes from Matt. How does this affect the fisheries program where a hatchery is run on campus?
So I do know that this quarter we had to release the fish that were in there. For specific details, I would encourage you, if you're in that program, to speak with your faculty member. Again, the specific departmental plans are happening at that level with the deans, and they would have far better information than I do from a global perspective. And the other reality may be you're going to hear the same thing from them that they don't know yet, and that's partly because we don't know yet what those guidelines and protocols are going to be. But I would suggest for any of you that have questions about your specific program, please reach out to your faculty because we're doing our best to keep them informed of what we know.
Excellent. Next question, and this is from Kenneth. Can students study outside on campus at the tables to use Wi-Fi? And I think the shorter answer on this likely right now is that the campus is closed to the public. And we are expected to maintain any social distancing expectations within the Oregon Health Authority and the governor's executive order. So at this point, we're not staffed to be open, and we are not open, but we are evaluating alternative options and solutions for access to Wi-Fi. We have a team I'm actually a part of that's evaluating access for hotspots, resources through local internet companies, internet solutions. We do have laptops as well too that we're giving away for use throughout the pandemic. So we are evaluating a number of options, but at this point, since the campus is closed to the public, we would not encourage that at this point. From Bobby, will FAFSA help students that may fail with online classes in the future? And really specifically around maximum time frame appeals. To answer this question, what I'd say is, at this point in the term, if you have concerns about where you're at in the class, definitely get in touch with us in Student Services and your advisor, so we can try to actually help and support you now before it is too late for failing a course. But we have gotten guidance from the Department of Education, which oversees the FAFSA application, to be a bit more flexible and lenient, given the fact that everybody's been turned into a remote or online environment, and the adjustment to that can be more challenging. So we definitely want to work with you. So definitely reach out if you're in that situation now. From Parrish, what are the plans for the athletic programs and teams, or will this be a topic that will be changing as circumstances change?
Yes, it'll be a topic that will be changing as circumstances change. Similar to the college and the state, the NWAC is, and they serve a larger region, but they're having to come up with the protocols of what will happen in the fall. And again, they have not made those determinations yet. So more information will be coming on those.
Excellent. And then just two more from Bradley. Can we, the advocate, get elaborated explanations to your answers on this chat in a separate email correspondence? I'd say, Bradley, absolutely, we'd be happy to do that. If there's anything in particular, I can actually send you a copy of the chat. And if there's anything in particular you want us to elaborate on, if you can highlight that and send it back to us, we'll be able to respond to those. And from Christian, if we are not taking summer courses, when will borrowed items be returned to the school? So I probably need a little more clarification to respond to that. So one of the loaner laptops that we had purchased, I think those are going to be available to you through the entire time of the pandemic. Aside from that, library materials, I know that we've kind of extended out timelines on returning a number of things as well too. And then I'll consider this the last question. Do you believe that more classes will move to online or hybrid options even after the pandemic has ended?
That's a great question. And it's been interesting to hear even from some faculty who originally said, I'm not interested in teaching online, that are actually enjoying the experience and realizing different things they can incorporate into their classrooms. So I can't speak for them, but I think there is an awareness of how technology can enhance the classroom. I do see an advantage of the hybrid is it allows that face-to-face, because I also hear that's another thing students are missing, right? That's that social piece that happens with learning. But hybrid is a nice model where you get a little bit of both, and it does create some more flexibility. So again, too soon to tell, but I do think that this experience, that's one of the outcomes, is we've learned a lot, and we'll be looking at those best practices and things that are working best for students that we can continue to do.
Excellent. All right. Well, Dr. Skari, I'll hand over to you for closing.
All right. Well, thank you again for everyone joining us and spending some time with us today. I do wish I had more definitive answers for you. I wish I had more definitive answers because it would make some of these things more easier. But I do appreciate your time and interest. And please know that as you continue to have questions, reach out to Kazu. You can send me an email. You can send John an email. But let us know, you know, what the questions are, what you need clarification on, because it also informs us on what we can make sure that we're doing a better job of messaging on. So under normal circumstances, this would have been pizza with the presidents, and we would now turn it over and have some pizza. So I look forward to a point where we can do that again. But I just want to say thank you again for taking this time. And I hope you have a great rest of your spring term. Good luck on finals, and stay safe.